Hey YouTube, it is Nebby, and today I'm going to be running over some more hero tips which I did not cover in my first video. I wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who suggested different tips in the comment section. A lot of them I did actually not know about, so now that I know about them I can share them with everyone who sees this video. So that's a good thing. We can get these tips out there for everyone to learn and to know about so that they can use these to better improve their hero gameplay. In today's video we're going to be covering not only the new Last Jedi heroes, Finn and Captain Phasma, but also some of the other heroes that I did not cover in my first video, and we're also going to be looking at Palpatine and Rey and some updated tips on them, because I did do them in the last video, but there are actually some new tips that I have learned which I didn't cover. So that's what I'm going to be doing in this video, that's what I'm going to be covering, and let's get straight into it. Alright, so let's start off with the new heroes, the Last Jedi DLC heroes, Captain Phasma and Finn. We're going to start off with Captain Phasma. So, one thing that I have learned about Captain Phasma is that her actual gun has reduced spread the longer you shoot it. So it starts off with quite a wide crosshair, as you guys will see, and it has quite a lot of spread when you just fire it like that. If you're tap firing it, it's going to be a bit more inaccurate, but as you hold it down and as you hold down the trigger to shoot for longer periods, the crosshair actually comes in and the spread is actually reduced. So I did try this with hip firing and with aiming down sights, and as you guys will see with the pattern spread on the wall here, it actually is reduced the longer that you shoot. So that's an interesting tip to keep in mind with Phasma. And also, one of her abilities that you can get, like one of the star cards for abilities, actually means that her gun gets reduced heat every time you get a kill. So if you use that ability with this, it means you're going to be more accurate and you're going to be able to shoot for longer periods. So it all ties together, and I believe that's how Captain Phasma is meant to be played. Another little tip that I have with Phasma involves her sentry droid. So the sentry droid is quite different to the actual normal infantry turrets that you see on the Battlefront. Basically, her sentry droid, it does three things. It can shoot enemies, it can shock enemies, and it can reveal enemies when it shoots them. So, as you guys will see, it doesn't act as a normal infantry turret. It doesn't quite have the range and the power with the blaster that the infantry turret does. It actually does less damage than the infantry turret. But the reason why it is weaker is because it can actually shock enemies. So, as you guys will see, there's a little radius around the droid, and that's the shock radius. So if anyone comes within that radius, then the droid will actually shock them. And this is extremely useful using her Staff Strike, which actually I believe is her weakest ability. It's very weak because it takes so long to actually use. There's a huge animation to use it. So I wouldn't suggest using it much, but if you do want to get kills with the Staff Strike, I would suggest using it in conjunction with this droid. So basically what you can do is you can shock them with the droid, and then when they get shocked, you can run up to them and use the Staff Strike to kill them. And that's how I would suggest using the Staff Strike. But back to the droid, as I said, it doesn't function as a usual infantry turret would. It's actually very different. So you can't actually put it in corridors and in like open spaces where you'd put a normal infantry turret. The actual best way to use this is to put it in corners of rooms or sort of out of the way where people would sort of walk past it, because that's where it's going to be most effective, because it doesn't have quite a lot of damage, it doesn't have much range with the blaster. So if you chuck it in the open, people are just going to destroy it, and it's not going to really function that well. But if you chuck it in the corner of a room, in a little hiding spot somewhere, people will walk past it, and then you can shock them, and then you can finish them off that way, and it will blast them after it has shocked them. So that's a few tips there with Captain Phasma, which I thought were extremely useful for using her. Another small tip that I do have with her is using her Survivor ability. Now, obviously, she can't sprint when she's using this, so if you're sprinting and then you use this ability, you will walk slowly for a couple of seconds. Now, this is very minor, but if you do jump or roll while using that ability, it'll actually stop you from not being able to run. So obviously you're going to have to jump or roll, but I feel like that's a bit more productive than just walking. So you'll be a harder target to hit and you'll be more elusive. And that's a small little tip that I had with Phasma. Next up we have Finn. Now, I don't know if you guys have actually heard, but this guy's a pretty big deal in the Resistance. He's a huge deal actually. He's an absolute legend. He's a Resistance fighter. He's a Resistance hero. But a few tips I have for him in Battlefront 2 is to do with his abilities. So, similarly to Captain Phasma, Finn can use his big deal ability while rolling or jumping, which does sort of cancel out the animation where he puts up his fist and walks more slowly. So that's a small little tip to keep in mind with Finn. And the other thing is that you can use his Big Deal ability and his Deadeye ability in conjunction together. So when you use Big Deal, you can then turn on Deadeye and you can have the extra buffs, and you can be buffing your team with Big Deal while also using the Deadeye ability. Now this actually doesn't work for his other abilities. So if you have any other ability active like Big Deal or Deadeye, you cannot use undercover team at the same time. So make sure to make the most of Finn's abilities, make sure to use his big deal to get that buff for your team, and then also use the Deadeye ability at the same time so you can have all those buffs. Another tip that I have with Finn is that his big deal ability, the health buff that you get from using that ability actually does carry over when you cancel out the ability. It does carry over for about 30 seconds and it goes down very slowly. So if you want a little bit of extra health and you're not actually looking to buff your team, you can use this ability and then cancel it straight away and you will still have that health for about 30 seconds. And this is extremely useful when you're going for a flank. If you use undercover team to get a flank or to go and attack multiple enemies, what I like to do is use big deal and then cancel it out. I instantly have that health buff and then I can use undercover team to go and push, and I won't lose as much health that way because I've got that extra health buff. And this works the same way when using Deadeye. You can use big deal to give yourself that health buff and then you can turn it off, get that health, and then use Deadeye to get basically heaps of kills. Also, do correct me if I'm wrong, but I actually believe that Finn's big deal ability, it doesn't work like the officer's ability where you use it once and everyone in the radius around you is affected by it. I believe it's actually, as long as that ability is active for Finn, there is a circle around him and anyone who comes into that circle at any stage is actually going to receive the buff. So I believe you get no cooling, like no overheat on your blasters. I believe you get the health buff and you get a speed increase as well while you're running. So I believe all those things carry over as long as Finn has that ability active. So anyone within that circle is affected by that, and it doesn't have to be like a one-time use, like when you use it, it's everyone who's in the circle at the time. It's actually whenever you have it on, anyone who comes in at all will be affected by it. So that's a good thing to keep in mind when playing with Finn. Also guys, make sure you test out Finn in Heroes and Villains. He actually destroys anyone who cannot block. This is like Boba Fett's kryptonite, guys. His Deadeye ability actually destroys Boba Fett. It melts him because Boba Fett's whole purpose is to be hard to hit and he avoids damage by flying. But Finn, because he gets the Deadeye, he hits every single shot on Boba Fett and he can do huge amounts of damage to Boba Fett or anyone who can't block. Even if you get a flank, Deadeye is an actually insane ability. So make sure to try that out in Heroes and Villains. Next up, we have Palpatine. Now, I did touch on Palpatine in the last one. I gave you guys some useful tips on him. But there are actually two major tips that I have with Palpatine that are huge. These are huge game changers for Palpatine. So, the first one is that Palpatine actually does have a melee ability. Now, I did not know this until someone told me in my comment section. Basically, you use the melee ability and Palpatine does a short little double-handed jab thing, like electric jab, and he basically does half the health of a assault. At least he did in arcade. They may have reduced health, but I believe it does at least 50 damage, and this is actually quite useful for when you run out of stamina with Palpatine. It is very short range, so don't go around using it as a primary attack, but it's very clutch for those situations where you might run out of stamina with Palpatine, and then you can just use the ability to zap them. So as you guys will see in the footage, I'm zapping a couple of people here. It does do some decent damage, so that's a good tip to use with Palpatine. The other one is a massive game changer. So Palpatine's main lightning attack can actually go through walls. So this is huge because, as I said in my last one, you can use Dark Aura through walls to hurt people camping behind walls and that sort of thing. So you can actually use Dark Aura to hurt people through walls, but you can also use his main attack of lightning, which is insane because it really shouldn't be able to go through walls, but you can get people through doors, into their spawn rooms. It's actually crazy, but I did have a small thing to say about this. It doesn't work through all surfaces. As you guys will see, there are a couple of walls on Kamino where it actually did not work. It didn't go through even though I was lining it up perfectly. But as you guys can see, on this thinner wall that closes and opens, I was zapping that guy through it. So make sure to keep that one in mind with Palpatine, guys. It does go through walls, but not always. One more thing to keep in mind with Palpatine as well, guys, is the way his lightning looks when using it. So I took a while to figure this one out. Basically, if you're holding his attack down and it's going all over the screen, it's like a wide radius of lightning, that's not what you want to see. If you're not doing much damage, that's why. Basically, you want to see the lightning where it's going in a straighter line. It's basically going directly to the opponent, and that's where you're going to get your serious damage. So if you don't actually aim at the target, it will do that thing all over the screen and it won't do any damage. And I've been confused by this. I've been like, why isn't he doing any damage? But it's because I'm not aiming at the person properly. He doesn't actually lock on like he did in Battlefront 1. You do have to aim with him. So make sure when you're playing with Palpatine, you have that straight lightning and you're hitting the opponent directly, and then you'll be doing a lot more damage. Now we have Rey. So I did touch on Rey in the last one again, and I did learn a couple of things from people in the comment section commenting about Rey. So the first one with Rey is that Along with going off the enemy map and actually showing enemies on the map, her inside ability actually gives her unlimited stamina. So this means that you can swing as many times as you want and you can block for as long as you want while the ability is active. Now this is extremely useful because it means you can just hack away at enemies and heroes and villains. It means you can block for as long as you want against enemies shooting at you. And also it means that if you are blocking enemies and you're about to run out, you can just pop this ability quickly and then you can start blocking again. So that's an extremely useful tip with Rey, which I did not know about, but now we know about it and it's good. So make sure that if you want more stamina, you just use Rey's inside ability. The other one was her charge ability. So when she charges at them with her lightsaber out, I told you guys that she could only cancel it by dashing backwards, forwards, or frontways, but she can actually cancel it out by swinging her lightsaber, which is actually a much more effective way of using it. So basically what you do is you charge at them, you hit them with the lightsaber, knock them over, and then as soon as that happens, you press R2 or whatever it is on Xbox, PC, you do your main attack, and then you can just swing a lightsaber and it cancels out the charge, so you can knock them over instantly and hit them. So that's a much more effective way of using that ability and cancelling it out, because it gives you more time to get damage off on your opponent. So now we have Darth Maul, who is probably one of the best villains in the game. He's actually insane. He's awesome, but the first tip I have is to do with his saber throw. So obviously when you use Darth Maul's saber throw, it means he's defenseless. I mean, he can't already block, but he can't actually attack. So Darth Maul's main defense is actually his attack, his offense. So when he throws his lightsaber, he can't actually swing his lightsaber because he doesn't have it. So he can't do any damage on enemies. So one tip I do have with Darth Maul is that you want to stay mobile after you throw his lightsaber. So as you guys will see here, I throw the lightsaber and then I just dash behind cover and the lightsaber will still come back to you through the cover. So you don't have to worry about the lightsaber not coming back to you or anything. So that's one to keep in mind with Darth Maul. When you throw his lightsaber, just keep on dashing and stay elusive so people can't hurt you while you can't actually hurt them. Another one I have with Darth Maul is that he can actually activate his Force Choke just before he hits the ground after a jump. So if you jump up in the air and then you press the ability to do Force Choke, he actually will start doing it just before he hits the ground. Now, this is extremely useful. If you see a big group of enemies ahead and you want to go towards them, but you don't want to run straight at them, what you can do is you can jump, and then when you're about to land in front of them, you can activate your Force Choke and it'll actually activate the animation just before you land, and then it'll do it straight away as soon as you land. So that's a good one also to keep in mind with Darth Maul. The last tip that I have for Darth Maul involves his rush ability. Now, unlike in Battlefront 1, the rush ability with Darth Maul and Luke Skywalker can't actually go up into the air. It sort of sticks you on the ground, so you can't actually go into the air while using this. But what I have discovered with this dash ability is if you do it off a high place onto lower ground, it can actually throw you into the air, and it actually gets a lot further than a jump can, depending on the height. So as you guys will see on Naboo here, I'm jumping out of the window, and I can actually dash all the way across to the far stair set, and as I tested it with a jump, I actually couldn't make it by jumping. So doing the dash actually gets you further than when you jump at certain heights. So if you're extremely high up, doing a dash will actually get you further than a jump will, which is quite useful for different situations. If you want to cover more ground quickly, you can use this little tip so that you don't have to jump and you do it more quickly because the dash is quite quick through the air. Also, Darth Maul does actually stop the dash at the end of it, so he does have a little part where he's floating down, sort of like a jump animation, and you can use his saber throw ability during this, which is extremely useful if there's someone in front of you and you want to throw the lightsaber to get a kill. Next up, we have Luke Skywalker. So I didn't actually have many tips for Luke Skywalker, but one thing that I did realize from the comments was that his force push actually does affect his jump. So when you do a normal jump, you get a certain height and then you sort of go down again. But if you actually force push while you jump and you still hold the jump button, you actually can go about 50% higher than your normal jump. So as you guys will see in the footage, with a normal jump here, I can't actually clear this rock. But when I do the force push, I can actually jump way over the rock and clear it in one go. So if you ever need to jump up somewhere with Luke, which your normal jump will not get you to, try to use his force push to jump higher, because it actually will come in very clutch in situations where you might need to go up terrain very quickly, or if you're stuck somewhere and you need to jump up an extra height so that you can get out. So that's an extremely useful tip with Luke. If you ever need to jump higher or further, you can just use the force push while you jump to do that. Similarly with Luke, I didn't really have much for Leia. I tried out a few different things but didn't have much. But one thing that I do want to let you guys know about is that when you chuck her shield down, if you actually maneuver Leia so that her right arm is just outside of the shield, you can shoot out of the shield while the most of your body remains in the shield. So you can still use your secondary fire and your primary fire, shoot it with your hand just outside of the shield while your body stays inside the shield, which is extremely useful for taking less damage. And if people are trying to snipe you across the map, they have a much harder target, which is just your hand and part of your head. So that's one to keep in mind with Leia. If you ever want to just be sniping with the secondary fire or anything like that, maybe just chuck your shield down and just use the secondary fire just with your hand outside the shield to get those kills. The last hero we're going to look at today is Boba Fett. Now, not too much with Boba Fett. The main thing that I wanted to show you guys was that his dash ability is actually extremely useful in combat with lightsaber heroes. So it acts the same as a roll would with a trooper or with a hero. So when you're getting attacked by someone with a lightsaber, doing a roll will actually be able to get you out of the stun lock, and it means that you can get away just for long enough to do damage to that hero and fight back. So Boba Fett has the same mechanic with his dash rocket ability. Basically, if someone's swiping at you with a lightsaber, you can hit the circle button and the strafe button and you'll dash out of the way, and it actually means that lightsabers won't hit you. So if you do this twice, you can get enough distance away so that you can jetpack up into the air and then carry on the fight that way. So that's one tip that I had with Boba Fett. But yeah, that's basically all that I have today, guys. I did try to find as many tips as I could with each hero. If you have any more suggestions, let me know in the comments down below. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed the video, guys. Make sure to leave a like if you learned anything new. Let me know if I should do more hero guides, more tips and tricks, these sort of things. And yeah, I'm going to bounce. Thank you for watching the video, and I'll catch you all in the next one.
$1